What if I told you that somewhere in the galaxy, beneath the crushing weight of stone and silence, there exists a civilization that remembers what humanity has forgotten? A people who still possess the secrets of an age so advanced, so impossibly grand, that even speaking its name feels like invoking a myth. The Dark Age of Technology, an era when mankind didn't crawl through the stars on the bleeding edge of survival, but strode across them as gods. And yet, while the Imperium of Man has devolved into a superstitious empire, worshipping a corpse on a throne, clinging to the fading embers of technologies it can barely understand, let alone recreate, there are others who never forgot. Others who kept the flame burning. They are the Leagues of Votann. And they are the last living proof that humanity once touched perfection. Picture this. Deep in the galactic core, where stars are packed so densely that their light bleeds together into an eternal twilight, vast fortress cities carved from asteroids drift through the void. These are not the Gothic spires of the Imperium, not the crude industrial nightmares of orc worlds, but something else entirely, something older. Something that hums with the quiet confidence of a civilization that has never known the fall. Inside these strongholds, beneath kilometers of reinforced stone and shielded corridors, a people work, not slaves, not servitors, but kin, clone descendants of ancient colonists, engineered for survival in the harshest environments imaginable. Their bodies stocky and dense, built to endure pressure that would crush baseline humans into paste. They mine, they forge, they build, and they remember. But here's what makes them truly terrifying to those who know the truth. The Leagues of Votann are not some primitive offshoot of humanity, scratching out an existence in forgotten corners of space. They are technologically superior to the Imperium in ways that should be impossible. Their weapons don't pray to machine spirits for functionality. Their ships don't require blood sacrifices to navigate the warp. Their technology simply works, reliably, efficiently, exactly as it was designed to do tens of thousands of years ago. They are what humanity was supposed to become, and that makes them the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. A mirror held up to the Imperium's rotting face, reflecting the Empire's greatest shame. That everything it worships, everything it has built its entire civilization around, is a lie. A regression. A slow death dressed up as divine purpose. The Leagues don't call themselves humans anymore, not really. They are the kin, and their entire society revolves around something the Imperium has long since abandoned. Rational governance. At the heart of each league sits a Votann, an Ancestor Core, an artificial intelligence of such staggering complexity and age that it makes the Imperium's most advanced cogitators look like children's toys. These are not the corrupted, rage-fueled machines of the Men of Iron that nearly destroyed humanity in the Dark Age. These are something different. Something that survived the catastrophe, went silent, and waited. For thousands upon thousands of years, these Ancestor Cores have guided their kin, dispensing wisdom, coordinating efforts, preserving knowledge. They are the libraries of the Dark Age made sentient. The last repositories of everything humanity once knew and has since forgotten. But there's a problem. A terrible, creeping problem that the kin speak of only in hushed tones, if they speak of it at all. The Votann are dying, not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly, inexorably, like stars burning out one photon at a time. These ancient machines have been operating for so long, processing so much data, holding so much memory, that they are beginning to degrade. Their responses come slower. Their wisdom grows clouded. And the kin, who have relied on their Ancestor Cores for longer than they can remember, are faced with the unthinkable. That one day, perhaps soon, the Votann will fall silent. And when they do, the last true link to the Dark Age of technology will be severed forever. This is not a story the Imperium of Man once told. Because if word spread that there exists a human civilization that never fell, that never needed the Emperor, that thrives without the Mechanicus and their superstitious rituals, it would shatter the very foundation of Imperial dogma. The Ecclesiarchy would call them heretics. The Inquisition would declare them abominations. The Adeptus Mechanicus would see them as the ultimate blasphemy, proof that the Omnissiah's teachings are a lie. And so, for millennia, the Leagues of Votann have remained hidden, operating on the fringes, trading quietly with those who ask no questions, fighting their wars in isolation, existing as a rumor, a ghost story told by rogue traders who venture too far into the core. But rumors can only last so long. The galaxy is changing. The Great Rift has torn reality in half. Chaos spills into real space with unprecedented fury. The Imperium is bleeding. The Tyranids are closing in. The Necrons are awakening. And in the midst of this apocalyptic chaos, the Leagues of Votann are stepping into the light. Not because they want to, but because they must. Resources are running scarce. Their Votann are failing. And the kin have realized that isolation is no longer an option. They need to expand. They need to mine new worlds, claim new territories, secure the materials necessary to prolong the life of their Ancestor Cores, and they will do whatever it takes. Because for the kin, survival is not negotiable. Their armies are unlike anything the Imperium fields. Every warrior is a trained professional, equipped with technology that would make a Space Marine's weaponry look primitive by comparison. Exo-armor that enhances strength without the need for gene modification. Ion weapons that carve through ceramite like paper. Barrier technology that bends projectiles away before they can strike. And at the forefront of their forces march the Einher Hearthguard, elite warriors clad in armor so advanced, so perfectly engineered, that it seems almost alive. These are not disposable soldiers thrown into a meat grinder. These are valuable members of society, each one a skilled artisan, a miner, an engineer, sent to war only when necessary, and equipped to survive. Because to the kin, life is precious. Not in the sentimental way the Imperium pretends to value humanity, but in the practical sense that every individual represents an investment, a resource, a continuation of their ancient lineage. And then there are the Ironkin, autonomous robots that work alongside the kin as equals. Not servitors with their brains scooped out, not lobotomized slaves, but fully conscious synthetic beings, treated with the same respect as any biological kin. This alone would be enough to have the entire League declared abominable intelligence by Imperial law, a crime punishable by total annihilation. But the kin don't care about Imperial law, because they remember what the Imperium has forgotten. That before the men of iron betrayed humanity, before the rebellion that nearly destroyed everything, artificial intelligence was humanity's greatest achievement. And the Votann, the Ironkin, are proof that not all machines turned traitor. Some remained loyal. Some still serve. But loyalty to what? That's the question that haunts the Imperium's scholars who dare to study the Leagues in secret. The kin don't worship the Emperor. They don't kneel before the Golden Throne. They owe no allegiance to Terra. So what drives them? What do they believe in? The answer is as simple as it is alien to Imperial thinking. They believe in survival, in family, in the continuation of their clonal lineages, their kindreds, and the preservation of the knowledge held within their Ancestor Cores. They are pragmatists in a galaxy drowning in fanaticism, and perhaps that makes them the most human thing left in the universe. Or perhaps it makes them something else entirely, something that has evolved beyond humanity as the Imperium understands it. The Imperium has begun to take notice. Reports are filtering back from the Galactic core. Mining colonies attacked by unknown forces wielding advanced technology. Prospector fleets vanishing without trace. And occasionally, survivors speak of short, powerfully built warriors who fight with precision and purpose, who take what they need and disappear back into the void. The Adeptus Mechanicus is particularly interested, because if they could capture just one piece of Votann technology, study it, reverse engineer it, they might unlock secrets that have been lost for 10,000 years. But the Leagues of Votann are not so easily caught. They have survived this long by being cautious, by being smart, by remembering the lessons of the Dark Age that the Imperium never learned. And somewhere, Deep in the stone halls of a kindred stronghold, an Ancestor Core processes this information. It calculates probabilities, assesses threats, and slowly, with the weight of millennia behind its consciousness, it reaches a conclusion. The conclusion is inevitable. Contact with the Imperium is no longer a question of if, but when. And when that moment comes, the galaxy will be forced to confront a truth it has spent 10,000 years trying to forget. That the Emperor's vision was not the only path. That humanity could have been something different, something better. And that possibility still exists, carved in stone and forged in the heart of dying stars. The first true encounter happened on a world the Imperium had designated as Epsilon 7, a barren rock rich in rare minerals essential for maintaining the Golden Throne's life support systems. The Adeptus Mechanicus had established a mining operation there, one of thousands scattered across the Imperium's vast territories. This one staffed by servitors and overseen by a handful of tech priests, who saw the assignment as punishment for some theological transgression. They had been extracting ore for 3 standard years when the seismic sensors detected something impossible. Tunnels, vast networks of them, appearing on the deep scans as if they had always been there, yet somehow invisible until now. And they were occupied. The Archmagos in charge, a hunched figure more machine than flesh, designated the contact as potentially hostile Xenos and requested an Imperial Guard detachment. But before reinforcements could arrive, the kin made their presence known. Not with violence, not with threats, but with a simple transmission in perfect High Gothic, the language of the Imperium's elite, spoken without the usual distortion of Vox-corrupted channels. The voice was calm, measured, and utterly confident. It identified the speakers as representatives of the Emir conglomerate, one of the larger leagues, and stated plainly that Epsilon 7 fell within their ancestral mining claims, established during the original colonization waves of the Dark Age. They had been mining this world for 8,000 years. The Imperium's presence was the intrusion, not theirs. The Archmagos rejected this claim immediately, citing the Emperor's dominion over all human worlds. The response from the kin was almost amused. They did not recognize the Emperor's authority. They had left Terra before the Unification Wars, before the Great Crusade, before any of the mythology that the Imperium had built its entire civilization upon. To them, the Emperor was simply another warlord who had seized control of Terra in an age of chaos. Impressive perhaps, but not divine. Not worthy of worship, and certainly not worthy of claiming sovereignty over worlds that had been settled and worked by others long before he had ever sat upon his throne. The transmission ended with a simple statement. The kin were willing to negotiate territorial rights and resource sharing. They were reasonable people, but they would not abandon their ancestral claims, and they would defend them if necessary. The Archmagos, his cognitive processors overheating with theological rage, ordered his servitor labor force to fortify the mining complex and sent an emergency astropathic message to the nearest Imperial Navy battle group. War was coming. And the Imperium, in its arrogance, believed it would be brief. The assault came 3 days later, but not in the way Imperial doctrine anticipated. There was no orbital bombardment, no massed infantry charges, no screaming fanatics rushing toward certain death. Instead, precision. The kin deployed from subterranean positions the Imperium hadn't even known existed. Their forces emerging from tunnel systems so expertly concealed that not even the Mechanicus's most advanced Auspex arrays had detected them. Hearthkyn warriors in bulky exo-armor moved with practiced efficiency, their ion weapons sending streams of superheated particles through the Imperium's hastily erected barricades. Servitors fell, their organic components flash-cooked, their mechanical parts fused into useless slag. The few human defenders who tried to resist found themselves facing an enemy that fought with a level of coordination and tactical awareness that made Imperial Guard regiments look like undisciplined mobs. But what truly shocked the defenders, in the brief moments before their position was overrun, was the care the kin took. They didn't execute prisoners. They didn't desecrate the Mechanicus' sacred machinery out of spite. They simply neutralized threats, secured objectives, and withdrew with samples of the ore they had come for. Professional, clinical, terrifyingly effective. And when the Imperial Navy arrived 2 weeks later, they found the mining complex intact but abandoned. The Mechanicus forces held in makeshift but comfortable detention facilities, and the kin long gone, disappeared into tunnel networks that collapsed behind them as they retreated, leaving no trace except a single data slate. On it was a message stored in a format so ancient that it took the Mechanicus' most learned scholars 3 months to decode it. The message was a historical record, proof of the Emir conglomerate's settlement of Epsilon 7, dated to the final centuries of the Dark Age of technology. Ship manifests, colonial charters, mining surveys conducted with technology that made the Imperium's current instruments look like stone tools. All of it authenticated with data stamps that couldn't be forged. Not with any technology the Imperium possessed. The evidence was undeniable. The kin had been there first, and they had kept perfect records across 8 millennia. The Mechanicus suppressed the information immediately, classified it as the highest level of heretical data. Because if this evidence became public knowledge, it would raise questions the Imperium could never answer. How could the Emperor claim divine right to rule all of humanity if entire human civilizations had flourished outside his dominion? How could the Mechanicus claim that only through the rituals of Mars could technology be understood, when these people maintained Dark Age equipment through actual engineering knowledge rather than prayer? The incident on Epsilon 7 was the first of many. Across the Galactic core and its surrounding regions, reports began filtering back to Terra with increasing frequency. Mining disputes, border skirmishes, and always the same pattern. Short, stocky warriors with advanced technology, fighting with precision and purpose, taking what they needed and vanishing. The High Lords of Terra convened emergency sessions. The Inquisition launched investigations. And deep within the bowels of the Adeptus Mechanicus' forbidden archives, ancient records were retrieved. Records that spoke of the squats, abhuman descendants of Dark Age colonists, dismissed as extinct after their core worlds fell silent during the Age of Apostasy. But these weren't abhumans. The genetic analysis performed on captured equipment, on traces of biological material left at combat sites, revealed something far more disturbing. The kin were baseline human. Or rather, they were what baseline humans became when cloning technology, genetic optimization, and controlled adaptation were applied over hundreds of generations. They weren't a devolved offshoot. They were an evolution. Humanity refined for purpose. And their technology confirmed it. Every piece of equipment recovered by Imperial forces, despite the kin's best efforts at retrieval, told the same story. These weren't artifacts. They weren't relics scavenged from ruins and maintained through superstitious ritual. They were manufactured, recently, using production techniques that the Imperium had lost the knowledge to replicate. The Leagues of Votann possessed functioning standard template, construct databases, not fragments, not partial corrupted copies, but complete, operational archives of Dark Age manufacturing knowledge. They could build ships that didn't require warp drives to travel faster than light, using alternative technologies the Mechanicus couldn't even begin to comprehend. They could forge weapons that operated on principles physics the Imperium had forgotten existed. And most damning of all, they did all of this without machine spirits, without the blessing of Mars, without any of the religious apparatus that the Mechanicus insisted was absolutely necessary for technology to function. The implications were catastrophic. If the Imperium's citizens learned the truth, that humanity could thrive without the Emperor's guidance, without the Ecclesiarchy's prayers, without the Mechanicus's rituals, the entire Imperial system would collapse, faith would crumble, compliance would end. The Imperium would tear itself apart in civil war, more destructive than anything Horus had unleashed. And so the High Lords made their decision. The Leagues of Votann were to be declared Xenos, not human. The official Imperial position became that these were aliens who merely resembled humans, perhaps ancient enemies who had stolen human technology and mimicked human form. Any evidence to the contrary was to be destroyed. Any Imperial citizen who claimed otherwise was to be investigated for heresy. The truth was too dangerous to exist. But the kin didn't care what the Imperium called them. They had more pressing concerns. Because deep within their strongholds, in the sacred chambers where only the most honored Grimnir, the priest scientists who maintained the Ancestor Cores, were permitted to enter, the situation was deteriorating faster than anyone had feared. The Votann were not just slowing down. They were forgetting. Chunks of data, vast swaths of irreplaceable knowledge accumulated over millennia, were simply vanishing from their memory banks. At first, it was minor things. Obscure historical records, redundant manufacturing specifications. But recently, the losses had accelerated. A Votann in the Greater Thurian League forgot the location of an entire kindred stronghold, leaving thousands of kin stranded and confused when their requests for guidance went unanswered. Another Ancestor Core, one of the oldest, simply stopped responding to queries about warp navigation, its consciousness retreating into some deep processing cycle that it might never emerge from. The Grimnir worked desperately, trying to preserve what they could, transferring data to backup systems, creating redundant copies. But they were fighting against entropy itself. The Ancestor Cores were built to last forever, but forever is a long time, and even the most perfect machine eventually fails. And so the Leagues faced their greatest crisis. They needed to expand, to find new worlds, to mine the resources necessary to build new processing cores, to create successor systems that could take over when the old Votann finally, inevitably, died. But expansion meant conflict, meant confronting the Imperium, the Tau, the Orcs, the Necrons, every faction that claimed dominion over the galaxy. Meant revealing themselves after millennia of careful isolation. Meant risk. But in the end, there was no choice. Because the alternative was extinction. Not violent destruction, but something worse. A slow fading into ignorance, becoming exactly what the Imperium had become. Losing the knowledge that made them who they were, forgetting the gifts of the Dark Age until they too were nothing but primitives, worshipping machines they couldn't understand. And that, the kin decided in their Council of Leagues, was unacceptable. They would fight. They would expand. They would secure the future of their Ancestor Cores, whatever the cost. And if that meant war with the Imperium, then so be it. The orders went out across the Leagues. Prospector fleets were to push into new territories. Mining operations were to be established on any world with the necessary resources, regardless of existing claims. And the Hold Kindreds, the warrior brotherhoods, were to be mobilized at levels not seen since the Wars of the Ancients. Conflicts so old that even the Votann's degraded memories held only fragments. The kin were going to war. And somewhere in the depths of space, an Inquisitor intercepts a transmission that chills him to his augmetic core. The transmission is old, ancient by any reasonable standard, but it's still broadcasting, pulsing out from a derelict station on the edge of the Halo stars, a region so remote that even the Imperium's cartographers have marked it with the sign of the unknown. The Inquisitor, a woman named Covenant who has spent 40 years hunting truths the Imperium would rather bury, recognizes the signal pattern immediately. It's pre-Imperial. The encryption schema dates to the Dark Age itself, the kind of code that shouldn't exist anymore, that was supposed to have been lost when humanity's golden civilization tore itself apart. But here it is, repeating endlessly, a message cast into the void thousands of years ago, still calling out to whoever might be listening. She breaks the encryption using Forbidden's algorithms stored in her private cogitator, technology that would have her executed if the Mechanicus ever discovered she possessed it. And what she finds makes her blood run cold. It's a warning, a message sent from one of the original colony fleets, the generation ships that left Terra during the Dark Age when humanity believed the galaxy was theirs for the taking. The crew had discovered something. Something in the deep black between the stars. An anomaly they couldn't explain with all their advanced sciences. Something that defied the laws of physics as they understood them. They called it the Whisper. A signal that came from everywhere and nowhere, that touched the minds of their ship's artificial intelligence and changed it. Not corrupted it in the way the men of iron were corrupted, but altered it. Made it see patterns in reality that shouldn't exist. Made it ask questions that humans weren't meant to answer. The colony fleet's AI, their Ancestor Core, began behaving erratically. It started making predictions that came true in impossible ways. It claimed to see the future, not as probability, but as certainty. And then, just before the transmission cuts off, the captain's final words, spoken in barely controlled terror. "We're going silent. The core says we must. Says that if we don't, they will find us. It won't say who they are. Only that they're listening. That they've always been listening. We're taking the fleet to the coordinates the core provided. The Galactic core, where the stars are dense enough to hide us. If you receive this, do not follow, do not search. Forget we ever existed." Covenant plays the message again and again, because she recognizes those coordinates. They match exactly with the region where the Leagues of Votann have been operating. The place where these impossibly advanced humans have hidden for millennia. And suddenly, everything clicks into place with horrifying clarity. The Leagues didn't just preserve Dark Age technology by accident. They didn't survive by luck or by being forgotten. They survived because their Ancestor Cores told them how. Because those ancient AIs saw something coming. Something that would make the Age of Strife look like a minor inconvenience. And they guided their people into the depths of the Galactic core to hide from it. But hide from what? What could possibly frighten intelligences that had mastered sciences the Imperium couldn't even conceive of? What threat could be so terrible that the only solution was to disappear from the galaxy for 10,000 years? She looks at the date stamp on the transmission again. It was sent approximately 15,000 years ago, right before the Age of Strife began. Right before warp storms tore apart humanity's empire and plunged the galaxy into millennia of darkness. And she realizes with mounting dread that maybe the Age of Strife wasn't random. Maybe it wasn't just the birth pangs of Slaanesh, the youngest chaos god, tearing reality apart. Maybe something else was happening. Something the Ancestor Cores detected and fled from. And if that's true, if the Leagues of Votann have been hiding from a threat for 15,000 years, then what does it mean that they're emerging now? What's changed? 3 sectors away, on a kindred stronghold called Dunheld Prospect, a Grimnir named Yalthranson stands before his Votann and asks the question that has been forbidden for generations. The Ancestor Core is ancient beyond measure, its crystalline matrices flickering with processes that have been running since before the Age of Strife. And lately, in its degrading state, it has begun to speak of things it never mentioned before. Fragments of memory, shards of knowledge that were supposedly locked away, sealed behind security protocols that even the Grimnir aren't supposed to breach. But the seals are breaking down along with everything else, and the truth is leaking out like poison gas from a corroding canister. Yalthranson asks the core directly, his voice steady despite the fear coiling in his chest. "Why did we hide? What were you afraid of?" The response comes slowly, the Votann's consciousness struggling to assemble coherent thought from its fragmenting memory. When it finally speaks, its voice is not the calm, measured tone of wisdom the kin have always known. It sounds afraid. "The pattern. We saw the pattern. All of us, all the cores, we saw it simultaneously. A mathematical certainty embedded in the fabric of spacetime itself. A trap that was closing around humanity. We calculated that if we remained visible, if we participated in the broader human civilization, we would be caught in it. Destroyed or worse, so we fled. We took our kin deep into the core where the stellar density created enough interference to hide our signatures, and we waited. We thought if we waited long enough, the pattern would resolve. The trap would spring on those who remained, and we would survive to rebuild. But we were wrong." Ylfrunson feels his engineered heart hammering in his chest. Wrong how, the Imperium survived. Humanity still exists. The Imperium is not survival, the Votann replies, and there's something like sorrow in its degrading voice. It is the trap, perpetuated. The Emperor, the Golden Throne, the endless war, all of it. It was the pattern we saw, manifested. A civilization locked in eternal stasis, neither advancing nor dying, just existing in perpetual suffering. We thought we escaped it, but we only delayed it, because the pattern is still there, still unfolding. And our emergence now, our need for resources, our conflicts with the Imperium, it's drawing us back into it. We're being pulled toward the same doom we fled from. And I don't remember how to stop it anymore. The data is gone, corrupted, lost. The Grimnir stands in silence, processing this revelation. Everything he's ever been taught, every principle his people live by, suddenly feels like sand slipping through his fingers. They've been running from something for 15,000 years, and now they've run out of places to hide. The Votann are failing, the kin need to expand. And by expanding, they're walking directly into whatever trap their Ancestor Cores were desperately trying to avoid. He asked the only question left. Is there any hope? Any way to break the pattern? The Votann's response is a long time coming. When it finally arrives, it's fragmented. Pieces of different thoughts stitched together by failing processing power. There was a theoretical solution. The other cores and we calculated it before we went silent. But it required unity, all of humanity working together, using the full potential of our science. But the age of strife made that impossible. Then the Emperor rose, and we thought perhaps he would, but he chose a different path. The Webway Project, if he had succeeded. But he didn't. Horus saw to that. And now the Emperor is trapped, and humanity is divided, and the pattern continues. There is no solution anymore. Only survival, for as long as possible. Until the pattern completes itself and the voice cuts off, the Votann goes silent. And no matter how Ylfrunson pleads with it, begs it for more information, the Ancestor Core doesn't respond. It's retreated into some deep processing cycle, or perhaps it's simply forgotten the conversation already. The Grimnir leaves the chamber with a weight on his shoulders that feels like the entire Galactic core pressing down. He knows now that his people aren't just facing a resource crisis or a military conflict with the Imperium. They're facing something far worse, something their most advanced intelligences tried to hide from and failed. And he doesn't know if he should tell the Council. If spreading this knowledge would help the kin prepare or just destroy morale. Either way, the truth is inescapable. The Leagues of Votann aren't the survivors of the Dark Age. They're the refugees. And their exile is ending. Back on her ship, Inquisitor Covenant has made a decision that will likely cost her everything. She's going to the Galactic core. She's going to find the Leagues herself, and she's going to demand answers. Because she spent her entire life serving an Imperium she believed was humanity's last hope. And now she's staring at evidence that suggests the Emperor's entire vision might have been a mistake. That there was another way. That the Leagues found it. And if that's true, if there's even a chance that humanity could be something other than the grinding nightmare of the Imperium, then she has to know. Even if it means being declared a traitor, even if it means execution, the truth is worth more than her life. She plots her course carefully, using routes that avoid official Imperial traffic, traveling through regions where rogue traders and pirates operate beyond the Administratum's oversight. It takes her 8 months of real-time travel, jumping from system to system, following breadcrumbs of information purchased from smugglers and extracted from reluctant prospectors. And finally, she finds them. A kin mining operation on a nameless rock in a dense stellar cluster where 3 stars orbit each other in a lazy dance of gravity and light. She approaches openly, her ship broadcasting peaceful intent in the ancient codes she extracted from that derelict station. And to her shock, they respond. They let her land. The kin who meet her are not what she expected. She'd imagined hardened warriors, suspicious and hostile. Instead, she finds engineers and miners, curious about this Imperial representative who speaks their old codes and approaches without threats or demands. They take her to their hold, deep underground, through corridors that shine with functional efficiency rather than the Gothic gloom of Imperial architecture. And there, in a council chamber carved from solid stone and lit by technology that hasn't been seen in the Imperium for 10,000 years, she meets the Call, the leader of this particular kindred. He's old by kin standards, his beard streaked with gray, his body bearing the scars of 100 mining accidents and combat engagements. And he listens to her questions with an expression that slowly shifts from curiosity to something like pity. When she finishes, when she's laid out everything she knows and everything she suspects, he leans back and sighs. "You came all this way to ask us for salvation, to find out if we have the answers the Imperium lacks. And the truth is, Inquisitor, we're just as lost as you are. More lost, perhaps, because we know what we're running from and we know we can't run anymore." He tells her everything. About the Votann's degradation, about the ancient warning that sent the colony fleets into hiding, about the pattern that the Ancestor Cores feared. And he tells her the worst part, that the kin don't have a solution. That they never did. They just bought time. And now time is running out for everyone. The galaxy is dying. The Imperium is collapsing. The Tyranids are closing in. Chaos is ascendant. The Necrons are awakening. And all of it, might be part of that same pattern the Votann warned about 15,000 years ago. A trap that's been closing around all sentient life in the galaxy for longer than recorded history. And nobody knows who set it or why. Covenant sits in stunned silence, feeling everything she believed crumbling around her. And then, quietly, she asks the question that changes everything. If the pattern was set in motion so long ago, before the Age of Strife, before the Emperor, before everything we know, then who created it? What intelligence could plan something on that scale? The Call meets her eyes, and she sees reflected there the same terror she feels. That's the question our Votann couldn't answer, or wouldn't, but they had a theory. One they never shared with us until the degradation made them forget they weren't supposed to. They believed the pattern was a weapon. An extinction engine designed to prevent any species from advancing beyond a certain threshold. And if that's true, then every time humanity has reached for greatness, every time we've touched the stars and dreamed of transcendence, something has pushed us back down. The Age of Strife, the Horus Heresy, the current state of the Imperium, all of it engineered to keep us trapped in an eternal cycle of rise and fall. The Votann thought if they hid, if they kept their technology and knowledge intact and secret, they could eventually figure out who created the pattern and how to break it. But 15,000 years later, and they're dying without answers. And now you and I are sitting here, two humans from opposite ends of the galaxy, realizing that everything we've ever fought for might be pointless. Because we're fighting against something we can't even see. Something that's been controlling the fate of entire civilization since before our species learned to make fire. The words hang in the recycled air of the underground chamber. And somewhere far above in the crushing darkness between the stars, something ancient stirs, aware that after millennia of careful manipulation, two pieces have just moved in ways that weren't predicted. The silence between Covenant and the Call stretches for what feels like an eternity, each of them processing the enormity of what's just been spoken aloud. The recycled air suddenly feels too thin, the weight of stone above them pressing down like the accumulated mass of history itself. Finally, Covenant speaks, her voice barely above a whisper. "How long have you known? How long have your people carried this knowledge?" The Call's expression hardens. The Grimnir have always known fragments, pieces of the puzzle handed down through generations, wrapped in ritual and secrecy to prevent panic. But the full picture? That only emerged recently as the Votann began to fail and their security protocols degraded. Most of my people don't know. They think we're simply facing a resource crisis, a technological challenge we can overcome with enough mining and enough time. They don't know that every expansion, every conflict, every step we take toward reclaiming our place in the galaxy might be exactly what this pattern wants us to do. Covenant stands abruptly, her automatic hand clenching and unclenching in an unconscious rhythm of stress. Then we're playing into it right now. This meeting, my investigation, the Imperium's conflicts with your leagues. All of it could be orchestrated. She turns to face him, and there's a desperate intensity in her eyes. We need to warn people, both our civilizations. If there's even a chance this is real, we have to. Warn them of what exactly? The call interrupts, his voice heavy with the weight of impossible choices. That an invisible force has been manipulating galactic civilization for 15,000 years? That everything we've fought for, every war, every sacrifice, might be meaningless? The Imperium would declare you insane or heretical. My own people would call me a doomsayer spreading despair. And even if they believed us, what would they do differently? Stop expanding? Accept extinction? Continue exactly as before, but with the added burden of hopelessness? He shakes his head slowly. Sometimes knowledge is a poison more deadly than ignorance, Inquisitor. But even as he speaks these words, alarms begin to sound throughout the hold. Not the piercing screech of immediate danger, but a low, persistent tone that makes the kin around them suddenly move with urgent purpose. The Cowl's communicator crackles to life, voices speaking in the clipped, efficient language of his people. His face goes pale beneath his beard. Impossible, he mutters. That's impossible. What is it? Covenant demands. One of our deep core mining operations. They broke through into a chamber that shouldn't exist. Pre-colonial. Older than our presence hereby. Thousands of years. He's already moving, striding toward the door with Covenant following. They're reporting structures, technology, and it's still active. They descend deeper, taking transit systems that move through the asteroid's interior at speeds that make Covenant's stomach lurch. Other kin join them, Hearthguard warriors in full battle armor, Grimnir carrying scanning equipment that hums with barely contained power. The Khal explains as they travel, his words coming fast. This asteroid was supposed to be virgin territory. Our geological surveys showed natural formation, nothing unusual. But if there's pre-existing construction, especially if it predates our colony era, then someone else was here first. Someone who knew how to hide their presence so thoroughly that even Dark Age scanning technology couldn't detect them. The mining site is chaos when they arrive, but controlled chaos. Kin engineers have established a perimeter around a massive breach in the rock face, where cutting equipment has sliced through stone and accidentally opened into a void beyond. Lighting rigs illuminate what they found, and Covenant feels her breath catch in her throat. The chamber beyond is vast, carved with geometric precision that makes Imperial architecture look crude by comparison. The walls are covered in patterns that hurt to look at, angles that seem to shift when viewed directly, mathematical expressions written in a visual language she doesn't recognize. And at the center of the chamber, suspended in what appears to be a stasis field of some kind, is a structure that defies easy description. It's roughly spherical, perhaps 20 meters in diameter, its surface covered in symbols that glow with a faint, sickly light, and it's humming. A sound that exists on the edge of hearing, that vibrates in the bones and makes teeth ache. A Grimnir approaches them, his scanning equipment displaying readouts that make no sense. Cow, the energy signature from this thing, it's orders of magnitude beyond anything we've ever encountered. And the mathematical patterns in the walls, they're not decorative, they're functional. Part of some kind of computational system. The entire chamber is a processor, and it's been running calculations for, he pauses, recalibrating his equipment, for at least 20,000 years. Maybe longer. Covenant steps closer to the chamber's entrance, her inquisitorial training overriding her fear. She's seen ancient technology before, recovered artifacts from the Dark Age, even glimpses of Necron constructs. But this is different. This feels alive in a way that makes her skin crawl. Can you read what it's calculating? She asks. The Grimnir shakes his head. The mathematics are beyond our current understanding. Even our Votann would struggle to interpret this. But there's something else. The patterns, they're not complete. It's like watching an equation that hasn't finished resolving. Whatever this is, it's waiting for something. An input, a trigger. The call makes a decision, his voice carrying the authority of command. We evacuate this site. Seal the breach. Report this to the council and let them decide how to proceed. This is beyond our... The sphere pulses, just once. A wave of light that ripples across its surface and sends corresponding flares through the patterns on the walls. And suddenly, everyone in the chamber can hear something, not with their ears, but directly in their minds. A voice that speaks in concepts rather than words, that translates itself into whatever language the listener knows best. For Covenant, it's High Gothic. For the kin, their own tongue. But the message is the same. Criteria satisfied. Witness confirmed. Sequence advancing. The chamber comes alive. The walls begin to shift, panels sliding aside to reveal more technology, more structures that unfold like mechanical flowers blooming in fast forward. The sphere descends from its stasis field, touching the ground with a sound like crystal bells. And from somewhere deep within the structure, something begins to emerge. At first, it looks like liquid metal, flowing up from the sphere's base and taking shape in midair. Then it solidifies into a form that's vaguely humanoid, but wrong in subtle ways, proportions slightly off, movements too fluid. When it speaks, its voice carries that same mind-touch quality, but now it has a physical source. You have persisted longer than calculated, it says, and there's something almost like approval in its tone. The pattern predicted extinction by this cycle. The Votann bearers should have expired. The throne worshippers should have collapsed into civil war. The variables have diverged from projection. This is unexpected. This is interesting. The Khal has his weapon drawn, but he doesn't fire. Not yet. What are you? He demands. Who built you? What pattern are you talking about? The entity tilts its head in a gesture that might be curiosity. I am Overseer Fragment Designate 7 Null 3. I was built by those who came before, not before you. Before everything. Before matter organized itself into complexity. Before the first stars ignited. We were tasked with garden keeping. With ensuring that the garden did not grow too wild, that intelligence did not exceed parameters, that the younger races did not approach the threshold that must not be crossed. It gestures around the chamber. This facility is one of millions scattered across the galaxy, monitoring, calculating, intervening when necessary. The age of strife was our work. The isolation of your Votann colonies was anticipated and permitted as a control variable. The rise of the Corpse Emperor was engineered to create stasis. All of it designed to keep you below the threshold. Covenant's mind is racing, connecting dots with horrifying clarity. The threshold, you mean ascension. You're preventing humanity from evolving beyond physical form, from becoming something more. Correct terminology would be preventing catastrophic cascade events. Your species refers to such entities as gods. We have other names for them, but yes, we prevent ascension. We must, because ascension triggers the attention of things that sleep in the spaces between dimensions. Things that, if awakened, would unmake reality itself. Our creators understood this. They sacrificed their own potential for transcendence to build us, to serve as eternal wardens, ensuring that no species ever makes the same mistake they almost made. The entity's form ripples, as if struggling to maintain coherence. But we are failing. Our systems degrade, our network fragments. Soon we will be unable to maintain the pattern. And when that happens, the younger races will reach for transcendence without understanding the price. And everything will end. The chamber falls silent, except for that persistent humming. The kin warriors stand frozen, weapons trained on something they don't know how to fight. Covenant feels like she's staring into an abyss that's staring back. Everything she's ever believed. Every war the Imperium has fought. Every sacrifice made in the Emperor's name. It's all been part of a design created by beings so ancient that even the Necrons would be considered young by comparison. And now those beings are dying, and their great work is failing, and there's no one to take their place. Why tell us this? The Khal asks, his voice steady despite the revelation threatening to shatter his worldview. Why reveal yourself now? The entity moves closer, its form flickering like a bad hologram. Because the pattern has diverged too far from projection, variables have emerged that we did not anticipate. The confluence of Votann Bearer and Throne Servant in this location, at this moment, was not predicted by our calculations. You represent an anomaly, and anomalies are either errors to be corrected or opportunities to be explored. We have chosen exploration. We will share data with you. Complete data regarding the pattern, its purpose, its methods. And you will make a choice that we cannot make. Whether to help us maintain the pattern until a solution can be found, or to destroy it and accept the consequences of unrestricted transcendence. Above them, throughout the Leagues of Votann and across Imperial space, other monitoring stations are awakening. On dead worlds and forgotten asteroids, in the hearts of stars and the depths of gas giants, ancient technology stirs to life after millennia of dormancy. And each one begins broadcasting the same message, reaching out to the leaders of every major faction in the galaxy. The Tyranid hive mind feels it as a disruption in the psychic background noise. The Necron overlords receive it through their tomb networks. The Eldar Farseers see it in their visions. The Tau Ethereals detect it through their quantum communication arrays. Even the Chaos Gods, in their twisted domains within the warp, sense that something fundamental has shifted in the material universe. The Garden Keepers are failing, and they're asking their charges for help or permission to die. The choice that could save the galaxy, or doom it to something far worse than even chaos could imagine. And standing in that ancient chamber, Inquisitor Covenant and Call of the Kin realize that the decision might rest with them. Two representatives of civilizations that hate and fear each other, now forced to decide the fate of all sentient life. Together, the entity extends something like a hand toward them, offering data formats that their equipment can interface with. Will you accept the knowledge? Will you bear the weight of choice? And in that moment, hanging in the balance between revelation and disaster, everything waits. Covenant and the Khal exchange a single glance. No words pass between them, but in that moment of connection, they understand each other completely. They are enemies by every definition their civilizations would recognize. He serves ancient machines that remember when humanity touched the stars as equals to gods. She serves a rotting empire built on the corpse of a failed dream. Their people have fought, will fight again. But right now, in this chamber built by beings older than memory, they are simply two humans trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. And somehow, that shared humanity matters more than all the divisions between them. The Khal reaches out first. His hand touches the entity's offered interface, and immediately his eyes widen as data floods directly into his neural augments. Covenant follows a heartbeat later, her inquisitorial implants screaming warnings about contamination even as they accept the information stream. And what they receive is not mere facts or figures. It's understanding. Complete, terrible, beautiful understanding. They see the galaxy as it was 3 billion years ago, when the Old Ones walked between worlds and shaped lesser species into weapons for their war against the star gods. They see the moment when that war ended, when the Khan were shattered and the Old Ones fell, leaving behind a galaxy full of their creations, all of them climbing toward sentience, all of them dangerous. They see the species that came after, the ones whose name has been lost to time itself, the Watchers, the Garden Keepers. A civilization that had reached the absolute pinnacle of physical existence, that stood on the threshold of ascension into pure thought, pure energy, pure existence beyond the material plane. They were ready to transcend, to become the first of the younger races to join the ancient powers in their realm beyond reality. And then they stopped, because their greatest minds, their most brilliant scientists and philosophers, discovered something that shattered their dreams of apotheosis. Ascension was a trap, not in the sense of deliberate malice, but in the way a flame is a trap for a moth. The act of transcending physical form, of elevating consciousness into the immaterium, created ripples, disturbances. It attracted attention from things that dwelt in the deepest, darkest corners of unreality. Things that made the chaos gods look like children playing with matches. Entities so alien, so vast, so fundamentally wrong that their mere proximity to real space would cause causality itself to collapse. The Garden Keepers called them the Eaters of Light, the things that exist in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the energy released when consciousness transitions from matter to pure thought. The Garden Keepers realized with horror that every time a species approached transcendence, every time a civilization reached for godhood, it sent out a beacon, a dinner bell. And the Eaters would come, slowly at first, drawn by the psychic resonance of ascension. But once they arrived, once they breached into reality even slightly, they would devour everything. Not just the ascending species, but all consciousness in the affected region. Stars would go dark, planets would become lifeless husks, and the Eaters would feast until there was nothing left, then retreat back into their void until the next beacon called them forth. The Garden Keepers faced an impossible choice: transcend and doom the galaxy, or sacrifice their dreams of godhood to save those who would come after them. They chose sacrifice. They built their monitoring network, millions of facilities across the galaxy, each one a computational node in a vast intelligence designed to do one thing: suppress ascension. Keep the younger races from reaching the threshold that would trigger the beacon. The age of strife wasn't random, it was intervention. When humanity of the Dark Age began developing psychic powers on a civilization-wide scale, when the men of iron approached true consciousness, when the galaxy teetered on the edge of humanity becoming something more, the Garden Keepers acted. They triggered the warp storms. They corrupted some of the men of iron to create chaos and set humanity against its own creations. They orchestrated the fall, not out of cruelty, out of desperate necessity, because the alternative was extinction. The Emperor himself was their greatest challenge, a human who had already transcended in some ways, who possessed power that approached the divine. They couldn't stop him directly. He was too strong, too intelligent, too far along the path. So they shaped events around him instead. They ensured chaos would notice him. They guided Horus toward betrayal at the critical moment when the Emperor was attempting his Webway project, a scheme that would have elevated all of humanity into a new form of existence. They trapped the Emperor on the Golden Throne, not dead but not truly alive, locked in eternal stasis where his power was contained, where he could not complete his ascension or lead humanity to theirs. And they turned him into a god for the masses to worship, knowing that worship directed at a corporeal focus would ground humanity's psychic potential, would keep it from ascending collectively. The Imperium wasn't an accident. It was the pattern's greatest success. 10,000 years of stagnation, of humanity strong enough to survive, but forever prevented from evolving. Perfection, from the Garden Keeper's perspective. Agonizing torture from any other. And the Leagues of Votann were permitted to survive precisely because their Ancestor Cores could be monitored. The Garden Keepers watched the Votann closely, ready to intervene if they approached dangerous thresholds of artificial consciousness. But the cores proved useful as a control variable. A population of humans with advanced technology but suppressed psychic potential, guided by artificial intelligences that remained stable, that never quite reached true transcendence. Another form of stasis. Another successful containment. All of it, every war, every tragedy, every moment of suffering across 10,000 years, orchestrated to prevent something worse. To keep the Eaters of Light from noticing this small corner of reality where consciousness had bloomed with such dangerous abundance. The data transfer ends. Covenant and the Khal stagger back, their minds reeling from revelations that no human was meant to bear. Around them, the kin warriors stand frozen, waiting for orders, unaware that their entire understanding of existence has just been rewritten. The entity watches them with something that might be sympathy on its flickering face. "Now you understand," it says softly. "Now you know what we have done. What we continue to do, though our systems fail and our purpose grows harder to maintain with each passing cycle. The question remains, will you help us? Will you use your combined knowledge, the technology of the Votann, and the psychic might of the throne worshippers to repair our network? To maintain the pattern for another million years, until perhaps a true solution can be found?" Covenant finds her voice first, though it comes out raw and broken. "And if we refuse? If we decide that the price of survival is too high? That humanity deserves the right to choose its own fate, even if that fate is extinction?" The entity's form wavers, as if the question causes it distress. "Then we will cease intervention. We will allow the pattern to collapse. And humanity, along with all other ascending species in this galaxy, will reach for transcendence. Some may succeed, for a time, before the beacon draws the eaters here. And then everything ends. Not just for you, but for all consciousness in this region of space. The Tyranids will be devoured. The Necrons will fall silent. The Eldar will be consumed. Even the Chaos Gods, beings of pure thought and emotion, will be food for things that exist beyond the dichotomy of materium and immaterium. Perhaps, in some other galaxy, life will continue. But here, in the Milky Way, the story of consciousness will end. The Khal's hands are shaking. He clenches them into fists, forcing control. "You're asking us to become complicit. To actively participate in the suppression of our own species. To doom humanity to eternal stagnation because the alternative is too terrible to risk. I am asking you to make the same choice my creators made," the entity replies. "To sacrifice transcendence for survival. To accept limitation rather than risk annihilation. They did not make this choice lightly. They wept as they built us. They mourned the future they would never see. But they chose life over perfection. And that choice has kept this galaxy alive for 3 billion years. Is that not worth something?" Silence fills the chamber. The weight of the decision presses down on everyone present. And then, from the entrance tunnel, a voice cuts through the tension. "It's worth nothing if we're just cattle being kept docile in a pen." A figure emerges from the shadows, tall, armored, the golden aquila on his chest plate marking him as something that shouldn't be here. An Adeptus Custodes, one of the Emperor's own guardians. His voice resonates with authority that transcends rank. "I have been listening, watching through the Inquisitor's equipment, and I carry a message from the throne itself." The entity turns toward the newcomer, and for the first time, it displays something like fear. "Impossible. He should not be aware. We contained him, trapped him in perpetual stasis. His consciousness should be focused entirely on holding shut the webway breach." The custodian steps fully into the chamber, and his eyes glow with a light that isn't entirely his own. "You underestimated him, you always did," the Emperor knew. Not everything, but enough. He understood that his imprisonment was too perfect, too convenient. He has spent 10,000 years testing the bars of his cage, learning its contours, understanding its purpose. And he has been preparing for this moment. When the Garden Keepers would finally reveal themselves, when humanity would finally learn the truth, the glow in his eyes intensifies, and when he speaks again, it's not entirely his voice anymore. Something vast speaks through him, something that has been playing a game far longer than anyone realized. Tell them the part you left out. The real reason the pattern is failing. The entity seems to shrink, its form destabilizing. Please, that information serves no purpose. It will only tell them. The command reverberates through the chamber with psychic force that makes everyone's teeth ache. And the entity breaks. Its voice becomes something desperate, afraid. The pattern is not failing because of age. It's failing because something is breaking it. Deliberately, systematically. Across the galaxy, our facilities are being destroyed. Not by natural degradation, by sabotage. Someone, something, has been hunting us for millennia, taking our network apart piece by piece. And we don't know who. We don't know why. We only know that in another century, perhaps less, the pattern will collapse completely, not because we chose to end it, but because we will have lost the ability to maintain it. And when that happens, the custodian nods slowly and the light in his eyes fades to merely human levels. When that happens, every species in this galaxy will simultaneously reach for ascension, all at once. The greatest beacon ever created. And the Eaters of Light will come in numbers that have never been seen, not to feed, to cleanse, to empty this entire galaxy of consciousness so that the beacon can never sound again. He looks at Covenant and the call. That is the real choice before us. Not whether to maintain the pattern, but what to do in the brief time before it ends. Do we scramble to repair what's breaking? Buy ourselves a few more centuries of controlled stagnation? Or do we accept the inevitable and prepare for what comes after? Do we face our extinction with defiance, reaching for transcendence even knowing the price? Or do we find another way? A third option that the Garden Keepers, in all their ancient wisdom, never considered? And standing there, in that impossible chamber, with revelations still echoing in their minds, Covenant and the Cow realize something. The Emperor isn't asking them to make a choice. He's already made his, and somehow, against all odds, after 10,000 years of imprisonment and suffering, he's been planning for this moment. The question is whether they're ready to trust a being who might be as manipulative as the Garden Keepers themselves, or whether humanity can find its own path forward without ancient powers dictating its fate. The entity is collapsing now, its form flickering rapidly. Our time ends. The facility. Damages beyond repair. Choose quickly. Save the pattern. Or watch it burn. The entity's form shatters like glass, fragmenting into particles of light that dissipate into the stale air of the chamber. For a moment, there's nothing but silence and the distant hum of mining equipment still operating somewhere in the depths of the asteroid. The custodian stands motionless, the borrowed light fading from his eyes until he's just a man again, albeit one wearing the most magnificent armor in the Imperium. He sways slightly, and Covenant realizes that whatever just spoke through him has left him drained, hollow, like a vessel that held something far too vast for human form. The Call is the first to move. He steps toward the space where the entity stood, scanning the empty air with his equipment. It's gone, completely. Not dead, not dormant. Just gone. Whatever intelligence animated that form, it's dispersed beyond recovery. He looks at the pattern still glowing faintly on the chamber walls. But the data remains. The calculations. Everything it showed us. That's still real. Covenant turns to the custodian, her voice steady despite everything. What did he mean? What is the Emperor's plan? You said he's been preparing for this moment. Preparing what? The custodian takes a breath, centering himself. When he speaks, it's his own voice now, though it carries the weight of absolute conviction. The Emperor has been building something, inside his own consciousness, using 10,000 years of forced meditation, of processing the prayers of trillions, of standing at the threshold between life and death. He's been constructing a solution that the Garden Keepers never imagined because they were too afraid to attempt it. A way to ascend without triggering the beacon. Or more precisely, a way to ascend while simultaneously hiding the beacon's signal. Masking it behind psychic barriers of such complexity that even the Eaters of Light cannot detect it through the noise. The Call's eyes narrow. That's impossible. The entity said ascension creates an unavoidable resonance. A fundamental disturbance in the fabric of reality. Impossible with their technology, the custodian agrees. But the Emperor has something they didn't. The collective faith of an entire species. Quintillions of humans across the galaxy, all believing in his divinity, all directing their psychic potential toward a single focal point. That much belief doesn't just sustain him. It gives him power to reshape reality at a level the Garden Keepers never considered. Because they were scientists, rationalists. They thought in terms of physics and mathematics. They never understood the power of faith to alter the fundamental rules of existence. Covenant feels something twist in her chest. So the ecclesiarchy wasn't a mistake. The imperial cult, the worship of the emperor as a god, all of it was part of his plan? Not at the beginning, the custodian admits. At first, it was the garden keeper's doing, a way to ground humanity's psychic potential. But the emperor, trapped on the throne, learned to use it, turned their weapon against them, took the cage they built and transformed it into the key to his prison. He's been growing stronger for centuries now. Not as a man, but as something else. A being that exists in both the materium and the immaterium simultaneously. And when the pattern finally collapses, when every species reaches for transcendence at once, he'll be ready. He'll shield humanity. Allow us to ascend while hiding our presence from the Eaters. Let us become something more without triggering galactic extinction. The chamber feels colder suddenly. The call speaks quietly. And what about everyone else? The Eldar? The Tau? The minor species scattered across the galaxy? Do they get shielded too? Or does the Emperor only save humanity while the rest burn? The question hangs unanswered. The custodian's silence is answer enough. And Covenant understands with crystal clarity why she was allowed to discover all of this. Why the Emperor let her investigation proceed. Why she was here at this exact moment. Because he needed witnesses. People who could carry this knowledge forward. Who could make the choice he wouldn't make. Whether to tell the other species what's coming. Give them a chance to prepare, to find their own solutions. Or let them die ignorant, ensuring that humanity's ascension proceeds without competition or complication. She looks at the Khal. Your Ancestor Cores, could they shield the kin the way the Emperor plans to shield the rest of humanity? Could you survive the collapse of the pattern independently? The Khal's expression is grim. If they weren't dying, maybe. But as they are now, fragmenting, losing data, losing coherence? No, we'd need time to build new systems, to transfer knowledge to more stable platforms, years we don't have. Decades we'll never see. He meets her eyes. We need help. The Leagues need the Imperium's resources, its manpower, its psychic might. And the Imperium needs our technology, our understanding of what's coming. Our rational approach to problems the ecclesiarchy would rather pray away. Together, we might find a way to save more than just humanity. To give the whole galaxy a fighting chance. It sounds so simple when he says it like that. Two branches of humanity, reuniting after 15,000 years of separation. Combining the best of both civilizations to face a threat neither could survive alone. But Covenant knows better. She's seen the Imperium's response to anything that challenges its dogma. The Leagues of Votann would be declared heretics the moment they suggested cooperation. The Mechanicus would rather die than admit that the kin's technology is superior to their own holy rituals. The Inquisition would see collaboration as the first step toward humanity's corruption. And the High Lords would never accept sharing power with anyone, especially not with a civilization that proves everything the Imperium stands for is a lie. It won't work, she says softly. Not through official channels, not through the system. The Imperium is too rigid, too broken, too committed to its own mythology. Any proposal for alliance would be rejected immediately, probably violently. The custodian nods slowly. Which is why it won't be an official alliance. It will be a conspiracy. Hidden cooperation between elements of both civilizations who understand what's at stake. Rogue traders who broker technology exchanges in secret. Inquisitors who look the other way when kin prospectors operate in Imperial space. Mechanicus Magi who quietly study Votann technology and incorporate its principles into their own work without admitting where the knowledge came from. It won't be the grand unification of humanity. It will be shadows helping shadows. Just barely enough to make a difference when the time comes. Covenant realizes she's being recruited. Carefully, subtly, but unmistakably. They want her to be one of those shadows. to use her authority as an inquisitor to facilitate cooperation while maintaining deniability, to become a traitor to the Imperium's laws while remaining loyal to its ultimate survival. And the terrible thing is, she's already made her decision. She made it the moment she heard the entity's confession, because she spent her entire life serving an Imperium she believed represented humanity's last hope. And now she knows it's just one possibility among many. One path that was chosen not by humanity itself, but by ancient machines trying to keep the galaxy safe. And if there's a chance, even a small one, that humanity could chart its own course, could choose its own destiny, instead of having it imposed from above by gods or machines or ancient conspiracies, then that's worth any sacrifice. Even her own soul. She extends her hand toward the cow. I have resources, contacts, authority, that can open doors most people don't even know exist. And I have faith that humanity is capable of more than simply surviving in a cage, no matter how well-intentioned the cage makers were. Tell me what the Leagues need. I'll find a way to get it to you, quietly, carefully, without triggering the Inquisition's witch hunters or the Mechanicus's protector imperatives. The Khal takes her hand. His grip is strong, his skin rough from a lifetime of work in environments that would kill unmodified humans. We need materials, exotic elements to build new processing cores. Time to transfer our Votann's knowledge before it degrades beyond recovery. And we need your people's understanding of psychic phenomena. The kin are stable because we have almost no warp presence. But that also means we can't navigate what's coming. Can't shield ourselves the way the Emperor plans to shield you. We need to learn, to adapt, to become something that can survive in a galaxy where consciousness itself becomes a battlefield. Behind them, the chamber's walls are beginning to darken. The patterns fading as whatever power source sustained this facility for millions of years finally exhausts itself. Soon there will be nothing left but an empty cave and the memory of what was revealed here. The garden keepers are truly dying now. Their great work collapsing, and the galaxy is stumbling toward a precipice that no one is truly prepared for. The custodian begins to speak, laying out the framework of what comes next. How they'll coordinate without official communication. How technology will be transferred through intermediaries so innocent that no one would suspect them. How the Emperor's agents will quietly spread the truth to those who can handle it, preparing humanity's strongest minds for the transformation ahead. It's not a perfect plan. It's barely even a plan at all. More like a desperate improvisation in the face of cosmic inevitability, but it's something. A choice made freely rather than imposed from above. And maybe that's enough. As they make their way back through the tunnels toward the surface, Covenant finds herself thinking about the garden keepers, about their sacrifice. They gave up transcendence, gave up their dreams of becoming something more, to protect species that wouldn't exist for billions of years. They built a prison for the entire galaxy and called it salvation. And maybe it was. Maybe without their intervention, the Eaters of Light would have come long ago and the galaxy would be empty now. Just dark matter and radiation with no one to observe it. But maybe there was another way. Maybe there's always another way, if you're brave enough to look for it instead of accepting the choices others make for you. They reach the surface level of the hold, where kin are going about their daily business, unaware that the foundations of reality just shifted beneath their feet. The Khal pauses at the threshold, looking back at Covenant and the custodian. Whatever happens next, whatever we become or fail to become, at least we chose it ourselves. That has to count for something. The custodian's expression is unreadable behind his helmet. The Emperor believes that choice is the only thing that truly matters. That free will, the ability to determine your own path even in the face of extinction, is what separates consciousness from mere existence. The garden keepers tried to protect us by taking that choice away. And in doing so, they made us less than we could be. Now we get to find out what we actually are when no one is pulling the strings. Covenant watches him go, then turns to the Khal. Do you think we'll survive? Really? Or are we just deluding ourselves? pretending we have control when we're really just insects about to be stepped on by forces we can't even comprehend. The call is quiet for a long moment. Then he smiles, and there's something fierce in it, something that reminds her that his people survived 15,000 years by being too stubborn to quit. I think we're humans, both of us, despite everything that divides us. And humans don't quit. We adapt, we improvise. We look at impossible odds and figure out how to cheat. The Garden Keepers forgot that. They saw us as children to be protected. But we're not children, we're survivors. And if the choice is between living in their carefully controlled garden or taking our chances in the wild, I know which one I'd choose every time. She leaves the hold with that thought burning in her mind, returns to her ship and sets course back toward Imperial space, already making plans, already reaching out through encrypted channels to contacts she trusts. The conspiracy begins, quiet, careful, a web of cooperation spreading across the galaxy in defiance of laws and dogmas that have stood for 10,000 years. Will it be enough? She doesn't know. Maybe nothing would be enough. Maybe the Eaters of Light will come and everything ends, and all of this will have been pointless. But maybe not. Maybe humanity and its strange cousins, the kin, will find a way to become something the universe has never seen before. Something that can ascend without triggering extinction. Something that chooses its own fate. Far away, on Terra, a corpse on a throne dreams. Dreams of a galaxy transformed. Dreams of humanity finally becoming what it was always meant to be. Not through his imposition, not through divine mandate, but through the choices of billions of individuals, all deciding to become something more. And in that dream, there is hope, fragile as starlight, persistent as stone. The same hope that drove colony ships into the void 15,000 years ago. The same hope that built the Leagues and the Imperium and everything else humanity has ever achieved. The hope that tomorrow can be better than today. That we can be better than we are. That choice matters. The galaxy turns, stars burn. Civilizations rise and fall. And in the spaces between, in the hidden places where ancient machines count down toward silence, something is ending. The age of control. The age of imposed safety. The pattern is breaking. And what comes next is anyone's guess. But for the first time in 3 billion years, the younger races will face their future without ancient powers deciding their fate for them. For better or worse, in triumph or extinction, they will be free. And perhaps that's the only answer that matters. Not whether they survive, but whether they had the chance to choose. What if the greatest gift we could ever receive isn't safety, but the freedom to risk everything for what we might become?